we all knew that we were involved in something important and that we were very special to be part of it. My experience with Tom Harvey, son of Chicken George, started in 1967. I was in southern France doing my first film. Part of the cast included James Earl Jones and some other fabulous actors like Duta Sek from Africa, Zakes Mackay from Africa, Roscoe Lee Brown, Cicely Tyson, all these people. Anyway, we were in southern France, and at one point, James invited me to meet a young journalist that was traveling through. He was on his way to Africa to do some research on his family, and his name was Alex Haley. 11 years later, I'm asked to be part of this whole experience of Roots. So it came sort of full circle for me in that respect. No, I don't think anyone was expecting that it would be the phenomenon that it was. First of all, I think the people, the actors, were terribly excited to be part of it because we'd never had anything like this before to be part of. So from that perspective, it was something unusual and new to be breathtakingly excited about. That said, after it aired, I recall sitting with my family and watching it. And it seemed as if everyone else in the country was doing the same thing at the same time. That's when we understood how important it was and what an impact it would make. It is absolutely true that Roots had as big an impact on African Americans as it did on everyone else. None of us have really thought about this kind of research before, this kind of going back and finding out who you were, where you came from. So it was a new thought, a new idea, and certainly one that has blossomed since then. It has become a quite natural thing to find out who you were and to dig out your ancestry. So yes, it did have a big impact on the African American community. It still has, I think. For some of us who were not necessarily born in America, find it a little more difficult to do that kind of research. But it all started with Roots. And I've traveled throughout the world and seen Roots presented in so many different languages. And it affects everyone in the same way because it is a story of family and it's a story about where you come from. I think the only thing that actors have to draw from, primarily, is their own experience. If not, you must go into the realm of as if, or it might be as this was. You have to go into, use your imagination. For me, I was not born in America. I was born in Cuba. Completely different situation in the 50s than what I experienced first coming to America and seeing the signs, no niggers, Jews, or dogs allowed. That kind of stuff was new to my experience. Certainly when Roots entered my life, when I was able to be a part of the company, all of those experiences had to come into play. I had to draw on all of that. And fortunately, or unfortunately, either way, I had something to draw from. I remember when I was married in 1966, it was still against the law for me to do so. I married a white woman. It was still against the law. This is 1966. So we might be far removed from that now, but it was a lot closer when Roots first came on the scene. The experiences were a lot rawer, I would say. I don't know that anyone anyone really thought that there would be rioting in the streets necessarily, but we knew that we were doing something that was important. There was no way of getting around the fact that this was material that had never been presented before on a mass scale to an American audience or an international audience. This was something that had never been thought of before. So how can you tell how people are going to react? We know that we're involved in something that's terribly important, that it is something that is touching and reaching all of us in our individual ways. We can only hope that would have the same effect on other people. You know that you're doing something important, but that's when the camera is rolling, but that does not stop you nonetheless from having friendships and creating moments and if nothing else, all the performers and the crew, we all knew that we were involved in something important and that we were very special to be part of it. Out of that grew friendships that have been very strong since then. The relationships were true and continue to this day. I can tear up. I could cry just thinking of all the people that are my dear friends that came from Roots and continue to be. Those that are still around and those that have parted, nonetheless. Great, great friends. Very good question. Why didn't all the performers from Roots go on to bigger and better things after all those wonderful performances? I have no answer. I have no answer to this day. The question is still here. When you look at the material on television, when you look at the material in theaters, the question is still there. Does it reflect the life of America as we know it? Where are the Hispanics? Where are the Asians? Why is it 35 years after Roots, we're still having this discussion? And what is the answer? I don't know. Yes, absolutely. It starts at the top. If you do not have the people in the decision-making positions that are open to and come from places in their life experiences, it's not going to change. You need the people that are making the decisions, the studios, the network heads, the producers, the writers, to make that difference, to start writing and doing stuff that is more inclusive. Otherwise, it won't happen. We had the benefit of a really wonderful producer, Aaron Spelling. I was not the first guy to have a lead, a black guy to have a lead. Certainly Bill Cosby did that with I Spy. Clarence Williams, who worked for Aaron Spelling in Mod Squad, and Lloyd Haynes, I think, didn't. But you need the guy at the top with the consciousness, again, like Aaron Spelling, to say, what about a black person there? How about putting a black man in that position? He also gave me my first directing job. Without Aaron, I would not be directing. I would not have produced. So you again, getting back to, you need the person in decision-making position to say, give the person an opportunity. Then hopefully you have a dialogue going. I had people who were willing to sit and listen to my experience, to my point of view, to give me voice in the show, and certainly I can only hope that it helped bring a certain reality to the show, that this the 70s after all. So I hope that it brought a certain reality. No, it's fair enough to say that there were not many black writers on the show and black directors. We had a couple. We had Ivan Dixon, who came on the show, who had done Hogan's Heroes before that and started directing on Hogan's Heroes. So he was one of the guys that we had who I loved working with Ivan because that was a completely different experience. It's a black guy that you're working with who speaks a different language and moves differently and all that. So again, it changed along the line because you had someone at at the top, Aaron Spelling, an executive who was willing to explore those areas and to bring those people in. So it must have impacted on the show in some way. I think it's all storytelling. Whatever we do in this business, whether you're an actor, director, producer, it's all about telling a story. Basically, that. Uh, I come from started acting before I started directing, so that's the approach that I take. I put myself in the characters' positions. I like to play all the characters as I'm directing. I've got to know where those people, or have a certain idea of where those people are going. But at the back of all of the focus has to be on the whole story. Actors approach their character from their place. This is my character. This is my guy. This is who I'm concerned with. There's no need to be involved with the whole production and know where everyone else is going. Leave that up to the director. That is our job. The director's job is to have a full sense of what the story is, the story that you're telling, and then to involve all the other people to infuse them with a sense of whatever is necessary at the time um, to um, to accomplish this, to make the story. Yeah, it is a fair statement to say that to wonder if it's more difficult for TV directors than you see. It's when you're doing film, you have a beginning and an end to the film. When you're doing a series, it's open ended. It's all episodes in this particular life of these characters. So from week to week, it might be changing. And certainly, by the time you come in to direct an episode, that series might be in the third year. Certainly, the actors know that character a lot better than you as the director. So it takes another step in working with the actor. You have to be able to listen to the actor and be able to adjust to what the actor needs because the actor probably knows the character a lot better than you do. Hopefully, your job is to, again, keep the focus on the story. What is the story that we're telling this week? Dynasty was it was a terrific show to work. First of all, they were very professional people, and everyone dressed so beautifully, and the sets were fantastic, and there was all this food around all the time. I mean, it was quite an extraordinary show to work on. But you had John John Forsythe, who was really the head of the show. The, and he kept it so cool and calm, that was his demeanor, that in the midst of all the divas, the calming voice of John Forsythe kept it all together. And it made it a rather interesting and joyful place to work. As a matter of fact, I affected for a while wearing slacks and sport jackets because it was such a civilized set to work on. We never went out on location, and we never had the normal wear and tear of doing Starsky and Hutch or one of those shows with the cars. And no, it was also civilized and playful. And we had wonderful food and drinks and all of that during the course of the shooting. So it was a fun show to do, and all those ladies, extraordinary, strong, beautiful, focused ladies who knew exactly what they wanted to do. Doing episodic is particularly tricky in terms of the actors who are there for however number of years. Not only know the characters better than you do, but they're well established and they have a certain amount of will and power to work with. Again, we all know you're the actor, you're the director, we know our roles, and we're there to fulfill one thing, to make the show happen. So regardless of your position, to take a place that is detrimental to the show finishing, telling the story, is not going to help. So everyone draws back when necessary. No one goes crazy. Everyone is there to get the show done. You smile a lot. You smile an awful lot. You're very sweet, and you learn how to present your argument. You again, it is like life. In terms of if you have a position, a strong position, you can't back away from it. You have to be able to talk it through and articulate your position. And I think that any performer, any artist, is willing to be reasonable if your position is well articulated. I loved doing Hill Street, and it was a tough thing to adapt to at the time because it was quite so different. But again, the leadership was very strong. You had a strong voice from Steve Boschko as the writer and creator, and a strong voice from the producer, Greg Hoblet, and from a wonderful the director who came in and did the pilot, Bob Butler, who created the look of the show. It was so strong an imagery that it was hard to get away from it. It was hard to get used to because it was so different, but it made so much sense when you saw it. Everything was kept a lot tighter. I remember the producers constantly telling me, "Keep it tight, George. Keep it tight," because that was the style of the show. And coming from the other shows that I'd been doing, the shots had a lot more looseness to it. Had to keep the camera moving, which was quite extraordinary. Before, the job was to keep the cameras as still as possible. Now they're telling you to shake the camera. Really? And you want all these sweeping moves at the same time. Really? So it was a different style, and something that did take a little transforming to get to, but at the same time was most exciting, and the actors were spellbinding and good and inventive, and I think the style of the show also brought a certain electricity to filming it that everyone fed off of. You had to have that kind of energy because the film demanded that kind of energy. There was nothing laid back about Hill Street. You had to be up on your toes with it. And you had to come in with that kind of spirit and energy and that kind of attack to it. There was nothing soft about it. So the actors, the crew, everyone, the demand was to come in with energy. A medical center was with my father-in-law, actually, James Daly. And I did a number of those. I recall with one of them with the great actor Will Geer, who was a wonderful, wonderful man and so greatly talented. I felt extremely fortunate to be able to work with him. The kiss. The kiss. Well, it was silly as hell. The kiss on North and South. A lot of discussion on that, whether it was going to be done or not, and we finally did it. It was no big deal. Again, this was, I think, in the early 1980s. Strange that it should be that concerning in 1980. But obviously, the country was still so split and disenfranchised that it made that kind of statement that a black man was kissing a white woman. Oh, big deal. I remember we did it on The Rookies as well. But the actor at the time was Tyne Daly, who happened to be my wife. So it sort of softened the whole thing, and the network permitted it to happen, I think primarily because we were married, and they felt that it wouldn't get that much flack. And I remember there was an ad we took an ad in trades and all that, tune in, and it was all about this strange phenomena of white people and black people getting together. So it's, North and South was some years later, but it was still a meaningful moment, apparently. Well, like I said, when Tyne and I got married, it was against the law in 16 states. It was still against the law in 16 states in this country to do so. We did it nonetheless because, as I told friends later on, because we fell in love. Simply that. We were going to school, we liked each other, we fell in love, we got married. That was what we were doing. I don't know what the rest of the world thought of it. I did not care. Again, I might have had a quite different perspective not being born, or not being raised in this country necessarily. So my point of view might have been a little different. But I don't think that Tyne and I really cared or put much thought into what anyone else thought. Did it impair us in any way? I have no idea. Did it shock a lot of people? I'm sure it did. Certainly, as we walked around even Hollywood here, the most liberal place on earth, it still got some attention. And I think we got away with it a lot because we were fairly young, attractive people that everyone sort of said, oh, they're just kids, and didn't give it much weight. But hopefully, and I can only think it was part of a trend or a movement that has continued to this time. The world is browning up in some way. People are getting together from different cultures in different parts of the world, more and more and more, and the differences seem to matter less. We have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go still, because we're sitting here talking about it. If you look at the programming on television, you see that there seems to be even less people of color involved, when there certainly should be a lot more. There is less programming focused on people of color than there used to be. I don't know why that is. As we discussed, it might be because of the people in the decision-making positions are not there to begin with. But at a time in our history when you cannot walk into almost any neighborhood without seeing varied people of different cultures and colors, it seems strange that that should be missing on television, which is the primary source of information. Because the African Americans need representation as much as Asians do. We do not see any Asians on the tube. We do not see enough Hispanics. We do not see enough people over 40. We do not see enough women. This is the 21st century. We've had women running for the presidency, vice presidency, head of states throughout the world, and we do not see any women over 40 on television? I don't understand. It is not my life. Everywhere I go, I see Asians. I see Hispanics in all facets of life these days. I don't see it on television. I think it's basically the same. I don't think production has changed that much. What is quite different is that we have a little more time to do it now. I recall the days of the 5 and 6 day shoots for an hour show. These days it's more like 8. That's terrific. You have a lot more time to, and I think that the shows these days demand a lot more than the shows of the 70s were a lot more simplistic. The whole production, the whole shooting was a lot more simplistic. There's a lot bigger demand now for more production. And so it takes a lot more work and a lot more detail. I think that a lot more money is being spent, and the technology is changing as well. The equipment is different. Uh, when we did handheld in the 70s, it was quite different because you had the old Mitchell cameras that were this size. When you told an operator, we're going to hand hold this shot, you were going to kill the man. These days, you have cameras that are quite, you can do so much more. I mean, cameras are this size these days. You can shoot a film on your iPod and on your iPhone. That's the technology has made that bigger change. You don't, the HD has changed the whole transmission of the product. It looks different. You light it differently. So I don't know that you can make a comparison, really. What I bring to directing is my background, which started in theater. I went into to acting, and by now, because I've had my own production company, I've produced, I've directed, I've acted, I've written. I have the experience of all these other crafts to bring to the table. So that if you hire me as a director, you're also hiring someone who has knowledge as a producer, who is quite mindful of the money and timing. And if you hire me as an actor, you know that you're getting someone who has great sympathy for the director. And all those things sort of play off of each other, I think. And I don't think you can necessarily break one off from the other. It's all part of the package and part of the experience of who GSB is. Certainly, once I started directing, I had a greater respect for directors. And then once I started producing, I had more respect for a producer. And all these things bring to the final product so much. You can't break any one of them apart and single one out. I just once I started directing, I became a much more conscious actor and did not want to waste the director's time. And I knew that he had a certain amount of time and was mindful of so many other things that came into play that it just wasn't about me. And when I started producing, I understood that the director also had a responsibility to the producer, that the producer had spent so much more time putting this stuff together before he hired me to tell the story. And so I had a responsibility to him to tell the story and to bring all the other elements together. All these things, I think, feed one into the other and can only hopefully make you a better filmmaker. I think we all want to have a sense that we passed through life and we were here, and that it wasn't all meaningless and selfish, that hopefully we've been able to touch and reach other people as well. Being part of Roots gives you the sense that you were part of something way bigger than yourself and that you ever thought possible for yourself. It has a life of its own that is outside of me. It has an impact of its own that is outside of me. And I can only be grateful to have been a part of it. It has enriched my life greatly, and I can only hope that it's also enriched so many other people's.